The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Kael'thor of the Vryn Collective delivered his verdict. His crystalline skin refracted the chamber's ambient light into sharp, prismatic patterns across the walls, a display that most species interpreted as smugness. The human petition for agricultural rights on Kepler 442b is, once again, denied, he announced, his voice carrying the musical chime characteristic of his species. The Vryn maintain primary claim to that sector, as we have for the past 3 centuries. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat motionless at the human delegation table, her fingers interlaced so tightly her knuckles had gone white. This was the 14th petition in as many months. 14 attempts to secure farmland for the overflow population from Earth's colony ships. 14 rejections. Beside her, junior diplomat Marcus Webb leaned close. "Ambassador, we could—" "Not now, Marcus," Sarah whispered, her jaw clenched. Across the chamber, young Lyraneth of the Vryn watched the human ambassador with curious, multifaceted eyes. At only 40 cycles old, barely an adolescent by Vryn standards, she was shadowing her father, Kael'thor, to learn the art of diplomacy. What she saw confused her. The human female's face had flushed to an unusual shade of red, and her breathing had become irregular. "Father," Lyraneth whispered through their private biocom frequency. "Is the human experiencing a medical emergency?" "No, child," Kael'thor responded with amusement. "That is what they call anger, a primitive emotional response. Quite harmless." Lyraneth filed this information away, fascinated. Humans were such peculiar creatures, soft-bodied, short-lived, and prone to these bizarre emotional displays. She'd read that they'd only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere 2 centuries ago. Infants, really, on the galactic stage. Sarah Chen stood slowly, and every delegation in the chamber turned to watch. The slick ambassador's scales rippled with anticipation. The moth-like lumini fluttered their wings nervously. Even the ancient architects, beings of pure energy, pulsed with heightened attention. "Ambassador Kael'thor," Sarah began, her voice deceptively calm, "for 18 months, humanity has brought our requests before this council. For 18 months we have followed every protocol, filed every form, observed every courtesy. And the council appreciates humanity's enthusiasm," Kael'thor replied, a note of condescension in his tone. "However, as we've explained repeatedly, the Vryn, Sarah interrupted, her voice rising, claim territorial rights to 17% of all habitable worlds in this galaxy. Your population numbers barely 3 billion across all your worlds. You couldn't colonize these territories in 10,000 years. A ripple of shock ran through the chamber. Interrupting a senior ambassador was considered deeply disrespectful. Kael'thor's prismatic patterns shifted to angry reds and oranges. "How dare you? How dare I?" Sarah's laugh was sharp and bitter. "How dare I point out that while your people sit on empty worlds out of pure bureaucratic spite, 30 million humans are living in generation ships, waiting for a home. The protocols are clear. Protocols!" Sarah slammed her hand on the table, and Lyraneth jumped at the sudden violence of the gesture. "Let me tell you about human protocols, Ambassador. When the first colony ships left Earth, we had protocols too. Protocols about resource distribution, about life support priorities, about who got to live and who got to die when things went wrong." The chamber had gone deathly silent. "Do you know what we learned about protocols, Kael'thor?" Sarah continued, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. "We learned that protocols written by the comfortable and the safe are worth less than vacuum. We learned that survival doesn't care about your regulations and your 3-century-old land claims." Marcus touched her arm gently. "Ambassador Chen?" Sarah shrugged him off, her eyes locked on Kael'thor. "You want to know what human patience looks like? It looks like 18 months of saying please to species who view us as amusing primitives. It looks like watching children grow up on metal walls because some crystal-skinned bureaucrat read a regulation wrong 200 years ago and nobody bothered to fix it. This behavior is unacceptable," Kael'thor declared, rising from his seat. "The human delegation is hereby—" "We're done," Sarah said flatly. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The explosion of sound that followed was unprecedented. Dozens of species attempting to speak at once, translators overwhelmed. The ancient architects pulsing with what might have been alarm. Lyraneth watched, fascinated and frightened as the human ambassador gathered her materials with precise, controlled movements. You cannot simply withdraw, Kael'thor protested, his prismatic patterns flashing in genuine distress now. There are treaties, agreements. Read them carefully, Sarah replied, her voice calm once more. The calm of a decision made and accepted. Humanity's participation in the Council is voluntary. We volunteered to join. We're now volunteering to leave. But the trade agreements, the technology exchanges, will continue with those species who wish to maintain bilateral relations, Sarah said. We're not declaring war, Kael'thor. We're simply done pretending that this council operates on anything resembling justice or fairness. She walked toward the exit, Marcus scrambling to follow, and paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, Ambassador, this isn't personal. Your species isn't uniquely terrible. You're just the one who happened to be in the way when humanity's patience finally ran out. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Years later, Lyraneth would try to remember that day, the day she witnessed a human finally lose patience. But like most childhood memories, the details had grown fuzzy. She remembered her father's distress, the chaos in the chamber, the way the other species had scrambled to understand what had just happened. What she couldn't remember, no matter how hard she tried, was the exact expression on Ambassador Chen's face in that final moment. Had it been anger? Triumph? Relief? By then it didn't matter. Humanity had colonized Kepler 442b, and 17 other worlds the Vryn had claimed but never settled. They'd negotiated individual treaties with 2/3 of the Council species, offering better terms than the Council's collective agreements. And they'd proven something that young Lyraneth, now an ambassador herself, had finally come to understand. Sometimes the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence or their stubborn resilience. It was the moment when they stopped asking permission and started taking what they needed to survive. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was smaller now, more cautious. And every species knew, though few would say it aloud, that they existed at humanity's sufferance. All because one woman had finally run out of patience, and the galaxy had forgotten that humans had learned to survive without anyone's permission a very long time ago.